Hey, what is up, YouTube? It is Matt Modi here with OddsJam. I'm here to teach you how to bet on March Madness. So I'm recording this the day after the NFL season ended, the day after the Super Bowl, which, as you can see, Eagles fan, don't talk to me about that. But once football season ends, everybody starts to become a college basketball expert. So I am here to teach you the basics of how to bet on March Madness, and then, of course, at the end, profitable March Madness betting opportunities. So when it comes to individual games in March Madness, it's no different than just a standard college basketball game. You have three main lines, you have alternate lines, you have some futures, and then you have anything else that might be unique to March Madness that we will get into. Starting with the three main lines. Now, again, it's the same exact way that a normal college basketball game goes in terms of the three main markets. That part's no different. So I pulled up a screenshot here from a conference game that we have between Baylor and West Virginia to talk about the three main markets. Now, the first one, and this is also the most common type of bet made, would be a spread bet. And the way this works is you are betting on how many points you think a team is going to win or lose by. The minus dictates the favorite, the plus dictates the underdog. So the number next, so we'll start with Baylor. You see them minus 7.5. That means that Baylor would have to win by 8 or more points in order to win their spread bet. So if Baylor wins by 7, you will lose your Baylor spread bet. They win by 8, they win by 10, they win by 20, then you will win your spread bet. Conversely, for the underdog, they could either, in this case West Virginia, could either lose by 7 or fewer points, or they could win straight up. So that's how the spread bet works. You're either betting on how much you think a favorite is going to win by, or if you think the underdog is going to keep it closer than the spread dictates, you would take a spread bet. Next up, we see right next to it is the money line. This is the easiest bet to make in all of sports in terms of understanding it. You're literally just betting on who you think is going to win the game. That's it. Who you think is going to win. Now, obviously, similar to a point spread, the minus dictates the favorite. Also similar to a point spread, the higher the number, the bigger the favorite. So like if Baylor is 10.5 point favorites, obviously they're a bigger favorite than they are currently would be at 7.5. Money line's the same thing. So right now we see Baylor is the money line minus 330. The math behind that means Baylor, if Baylor wins the game, you would have to risk $330 to profit $100. So the minus dictates how much you would have to risk in order to profit $100. So you kind of understand the bigger the number, the bigger the favorite. Basically, the sports book is telling you they think this team is a huge favorite, so they're very, very expensive to buy. The opposite is also true. The lower the number, the less big the favorite. For the underdog, it's the same thing. The higher the number, the bigger the underdog. The way the math works here is how much you would profit if you risked $100. So for West Virginia, we see that their odds are at plus 260. So if I risked $100 on West Virginia to win straight up, and they did win, I would profit $260. So to pause here for a second, between money line and spread is the most common bet in basketball. It's also the most common in football. It's just the odds are way more condensed, so it's a little more reasonable, right? If you're backing an underdog and you're backing the spread, obviously it's a safer bet. They don't need to win straight up. You're getting a 7-point cushion for West Virginia. Now, obviously the odds reflect that. Instead of winning $260 for $100 of risk on a spread bet, you would have to risk $114 to profit $100, as you can see on the screenshot here. So when it comes to an underdog, like I said, if you think they're going to win straight up, obviously it would make sense to bet the money line because the payout's higher. If you do like the underdog, but you're not sure if they're going to win straight up, then you're going to want to take the point spread. And it's very similar, but opposite kind of for the favorite, right? If you really like the favorite and you think they're going to win by a lot, betting on the spread is a much easier way to back the favorite with much more reasonable odds. From Baylor's perspective, you can go from betting on their money line at minus 330, which is very, very steep, to all the way down to minus 106 if you think they're going to win by 8 or more. Obviously, the risk is higher on a spread bet, but the reward is there as well in that it's a safer bet. So just a couple different things to think about when it comes to a spread and a total. Next up, we see the total points. This is the mainline bet that has no impact on whether the game, who wins the game or who loses the game or whatever. You're just betting on how many points are going to be scored in this game, over or under. So we see in this game, the over-under is priced at 148.5. All that means is if you bet the over, and you would need 149 or more points to be scored to win your over bet. Opposite is true for the under. If you bet the under, you would need 148 or fewer points to be scored in order to win your under bet. In terms of strategies here and why people would bet on the total, basically, if you don't have an angle on who's going to win straight up, but you think both offenses are going to score a lot, bet the over. The opposite is true if again, you don't know who's going to win, but you know that both defenses are going to show up or that the point total is simply too high, bet the under. It's an easy way to get skin in the game without having to back the winner or loser or someone who's going to cover or not cover the spread. But those are the three main lines: spread, money line, and total. Now, there are also alternate lines that you can bet on in college basketball. Those include team total. Those include first half spread, first half total. And also, depending on your state, you might be able to bet on college basketball player props. But again, it depends on your state. A player prop is exactly what it sounds like. You're betting on individual players' points, assists, rebounds. Basically, if there's a counting stat for it, you can probably bet on it as a player prop depending on your state. But the main thing you need to know, the three main lines: alternate markets, and then player props. Then there are also things you can bet on in March Madness that are called future bets. It's exactly what it sounds like. You're not betting on an individual game. You're betting on a future outcome. Types of future bets include: we'll make it to the Final Four. We'll make it in the tournament at all. We'll win the championship. We'll make it to the final. You're betting on a future outcome. That's another type of option that you can bet on when it comes to March Madness. All right, and so the last type of bet you can make when it comes to March Madness, and this part is specifically unique to March Madness. Then I will get into the strategies and stuff. But there are a bunch of different like novelty / specialty props that you can bet on in March Madness. It's kind of similar to the Super Bowl, where it's like only these big occasions, they kind of increase the offering of stuff you're able to bet. There are a couple different categories of these types of bets. There's like tournament bets, round props, seed props, and novelty props. Types of examples of all of these, like a tournament prop would be: how many buzzer beaters are there in the tournament? How many games will go into overtime? Those are just a couple examples. With round props, you can also bet on when a 1 seed will be eliminated, or if there will be like a first 4 team to make it to the Sweet 16. That's like a round prop. A seed prop: how many 12 seeds will beat a 5 seed? Will a 16 seed win? Will a 15 seed win? And then the most fun ones are novelty props, like will blank mascot reach the Final Four? Will a team with the color in their name reach the Final Four? Stuff like that. Those are examples of the different types of specialties and novelty props, not limited to the ones that I mentioned, just part of the fun when it comes to March Madness. So when it comes to March Madness betting strategies, the part that everybody wanted to hear about. The first thing that I love to do, I've done this every March Madness for the past 4 years, is if you just bet a single unit on every single money line underdog in the first 2 rounds of the player props. It has been profitable for me for 4 straight years. Again, you're just betting one blank unit on every single money line underdog in the first 2 rounds. The fun of March Madness is rooting for the underdog. It's just fun. It's fun to root for the underdogs in March Madness. So it does just increase your viewing pleasure, but it's also profitable. It's not just about having fun. It's also profitable. You'll have years, like last year, St. Peter's beat Kentucky. That would have funded the entire round, the way the odds worked for that game. Remember when the UVA was the only 1 seed to lose in the first round? 2 years ago, Ohio State was the 2 seed and lost. Upsets happen all the time in March Madness. Just putting a blank unit, a singular unit, on every single underdog, great way to profit. Next up, when it comes to March Madness, similar to that, you want to identify which teams are on upset alert. Now, obviously, that is easier said than done, but there are a couple things to look for. Number one, The most popular round of an upset is 13 over 4 seeds and 12 over 5 seeds. And there's actually a reason for that. So when it comes to seeding, a lot of the mid-major schools, like your St. Peter's, like your LaSalle, like your Lehigh, like your Murray State, schools like that, if they win their conference, because they have such a lower level of competition, they'll be seeded down a little bit. They'll be seeded at the 12 or the 5 seed. So every single 12 or 13 seed, So every single 12 or 13 seed is a team that won their conference and won their conference tournament. We all remember Richmond last year. We all remember St. Peter's, and they were a 15 seed. So identify which schools are at those 12 and 13 seeds that you think could make a run. And the reason why they sometimes have the better matchup than the teams are playing is a lot of times the 4 or 5 seeds are teams in a major conference like the SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12 that didn't have good years because of their strength of schedule were given a higher seed almost as like a reward for being in a tough conference. So those are the most common upsets. The 12 and 13 over 4 and 5. Now, it's not the only one. You want to make sure that you look into each underdog individually, identify the matchup. But obviously, you want to make sure you can see which teams are on upset alert. Next up, and this is an easy way to find a team that is on upset alert, is look at teams' home-road splits. So teams that you notice have a much better record at home are teams that you want to fade in the NCAA tournament. This is obvious. It's really easy to get up and play in front of your home crowd. In a neutral site, sometimes it's not as easy. So that's one way to identify which teams are on upset alert. Another way to identify that is look at the experience level of the team. Now, there's only been 2 instances since the one and done rule in which a one and done team has won the title. That was Kentucky in 2012 when they had Anthony Davis and just a stacked roster. And it was Duke in 2015 also when they had a stacked roster with Jahlil Okafor and Justice Winslow. Experience matters in the tournament. So it's easy to fall in love with a team that is full of freshmen that are just dripping with talent. It normally doesn't win in March. So another way to identify upset alert or just to identify a team that might be seeded as high that could make a run is look for the experience. UConn did it twice with an experienced guard. They won the tournament twice in 4 years. The first year with Kemba Walker, the next or a couple years later with Shabazz Napier. Experienced guards showed out in March. UNC and Kansas are a perfect example of this last year. They both made runs to the final with Kansas obviously winning, not really relying on a lot of freshmen. Ochai Agbaji was obviously the star with Kansas. On the UNC side, they had Baycott, Love, they had RJ Davis, a lot of not seniors, but players that have had a ton of experience. So when it comes to March Madness, experience matters. And that's going to be it. So that's how you bet on March Madness, and that's also how you make money betting on March Madness. So if you thought this video was helpful, would appreciate it if you could like the video, and then of course subscribe and comment helps me out a ton. But that's it. So hopefully everybody watching this is ready to cash in March Madness, and have a good one.